Hello, global people. Two chaps, many cultures. Monday is episode 101. Hey, that's a pretty impressive number. And there is something tied to the expression 101. We'll talk about that today. Let's go back to the basics. Check it out. Okay. Here we are. Sorry, you caught me off guard. All right. Good morning. We're dancing here. I am, at least. Good morning, everybody. Welcome, global people, wherever in the world you are. It might be good morning to some of you. It might be a very early morning for a few of you. It might actually already be midday or evening. So let us know what time of day it is right now as you watch this live. Tell us which part of the world you're in right now as you're watching this. We are curious where in the world you are. Where in the world are you, Brett?
I'm at home, Chicago, downstairs. Some people call it the basement. We prefer to call it the lower level. Thank you very much. The lower level.
Oh, do you have natural light coming in?
No natural light down here. No, because
I'm in the dungeon. That's what you call it, dungeon.
The dungeon. That's right. Yes. Where, well, it's a good dungeon to be in because I get to do all this creative work down here, and I get to speak to everybody here from here every day. So it's a great place to be. And how are you? Where are you?
I am at home in my house. At home is where my house lives. I keep telling people because my home for me is not a concept necessarily tied to a location. Right. Home for me is a feeling, and that can be in many different places. Right now, it's Atlanta, Georgia.
Excellent. More than a feeling. More than a feeling.
We should make this a singing show. Maybe not. Maybe that's a bad idea. Here, Volley says, "Good morning, Volley. 9:38 in rainy New Jersey, United States." Well,
where did the rain come from? Usually the rain comes here first and then goes to the east. I don't know where. We must have missed out in the rain.
You may have slept while it passed you. No. So it's a sunny day here in Atlanta. Just sliding that in here. All right.
Absolutely.
So 101, let's talk about the basics. Or when do we talk about the basics? And where does all this 101 talk come from? Enlighten me, Brett. Enlighten us.
Well, we hear a lot about, in academic circles, 101 usually kind of denotes a basis where you kind of start from scratch. This is the base point. Let's put the foundation under the learning that we're going to go forward with. So it really is the first part of, I guess, any ongoing learning and project that you might be partaking in.
Okay. It's interesting because to me, as a speaker of English as a second or other language, the term 101 did not register with me for the longest time. I was never taught this expression in English class, and I only picked it up while I was living in the United States. And I had to ask people, so what does this mean, 101? And in high school, I remember going to a U.S. high school, and there were the fellow American students didn't understand my question. Why would he ask such a thing, right? Yeah. So classical case of linguistic and cultural disconnect, because for me, growing up in the 80s and 90s in Europe, 101, the first association that I have with the number 101 is this, which is the live recording of a Depeche Mode album that, as I later learned, was recorded along Highway 101 in Southern California. They recorded it down there in the, I don't know, some amphitheater in Southern California. Great album. If you haven't listened to it, Depeche Mode 101 Live, probably one of their best albums. So that's the first association that I had. So I didn't make that connection to the basics, to the fundamentals. Yeah. So when will we start revising, reviewing? I think that's the word. When do we go back to the basics? In your opinion, when is it time to, as advanced practitioners in the field, when do we lower ourselves into the basement of the basics?
Right. Well, I'm just kind of thinking about why it's 101, first of all. And I'm thinking maybe Varley, who's actually an academic, actually person that went to school, like, I mean, to a higher level than we did. Oh, well, maybe not you, but me, So I'm thinking, why 101? That's interesting. Is the assumption, I'm just kind of throwing this out there, something that just came to my mind, which I'll just stream of thought. 101, 101 is the presumption that we've kind of finished our basic school. So we've got to 100. We've finished our basic school. Then we're moving on to a higher level, something more specific. So we've got the 100. Now we're just starting from 101. And that's to your point, is when is it time to do it? It's time to maybe think that we know it all. Time, we've got a couple of suggestions here. So maybe it's time when you want to test the biases that may have snuck back in to your work or the work of the team that you're working with. So because we all have biases and they exist, and we may have done some wonderful work to allay those biases and learn how to how to work through them, and perhaps recognize them and take advantage of the learning that comes to putting those biases down when you're working with people, cross cultures, so on and so forth. But that doesn't mean that they can't sneak back in. I'm thinking that, we just we go through day-to-day work, and all of a sudden some of our confirmation biases start to kick in again. We start to work, we start to see patterns that we kind of recognize. We think, oh, well, that's just the old, what I thought was going to happen, so therefore I know, so it's good to maybe do that, wouldn't you think?
I would agree, because I think the basics, they carry this connotation of too simple or very oversimplified and only relevant to absolute beginners. And I would argue that is not exactly the case. I think the basics can be paraphrased as the fundamentals, and without a foundation, your whole building of knowledge will collapse. So without being aware of the basics, of the basis, of the foundational pieces of any type of new knowledge, no matter what you want to build on top of that, will be a bit wobbly. And I like how you phrased it, when the biases sneak back in. I'm not sure about you all. Feel free to comment on this. I think, in my experience, biases don't really go away. We may become aware of them, and we may counteract them or overlay our consciousness and say, okay, I learned this and now I know this, and I can act against my bias because my bias is stupid. It kept me safe in the past, but now that I know more, I can do this. But it at the beginning, it happens consciously. But the root cause of the bias might still be there, because it's been taught when we were really, really little and young and impressionable. And I catch myself. I mean, especially, I've talked about this before on this program. I live in a very black part of the city here in Atlanta, and when I think I've developed a good attitude towards diversity, right? And I think I've learned a lot about the ethnic inequality and the cultural differences within the U.S. society, especially here in the Southeast, and the history to which it is connected. And still, sometimes some of these biases hit me. I don't speak them out loud. I don't act upon them, but they appear in my mind, and I'm like, where the hell did that come from? You're better than this. So I start chastising myself, but they are still there. So biases, I'm not sure if they will ever go away. So it's good to test against them. That's my comment.
Absolutely, yeah. So another one might be, if you've worked on a team for a good period of time and you're leading a team, What if team members change? What if there is, 25% of it is new people that have come in, bringing new technical skills, new actual skills to the project that are needed. But what about their learning and also the learning of others from those new people that have come in on the team? Because maybe they're coming on the team from different places in the world and different cultural backgrounds. And even if they are really from even if you're in a homogenous type of team where the person comes in that looks, sounds, and acts the same to you, they still have a background that's worth validating from the point of view of the rest of the team, and at least their working styles from a cultural or a personal point of view.
That often strikes me as odd when clients come to me and say, "Hey, we're doing this cultural awareness thing with our team, or we want our existing team to be more equipped with dealing with the cultural diversity that we are experiencing with our present staff," and they do it once, and then I leave them typically with the suggestion that this becomes an ongoing thing, that we start thinking about doing repeaters on this, maybe whatever their hiring cycles are, maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, depending on how what talent attrition they have, and depending on the client. But there seems to be often a reluctance to do this again, because well, we've done it, now we check the box on our learning and development cheat sheet, and now we're good. And no, you're not, because people will leave you, people will enter the organization, and your demographic mix will change, and so will your cultural composition on the team change. And the people that remain on your team will evolve as well. They learn, they make new experiences. So going back to the basics would be a really smart idea in order to have a great onboarding program for you as a globally present organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, kind of related to that is you can have new members on the team, but you could also be dealing with new customers. The new customer comes along, and as we talk about with cultures across borders, there's also cultures that exist in companies. So maybe it's a good idea and I would say that it is just part of the due diligence that should be done when you're onboarding a new customer to work with you, is that you do spend some time asking them about their company culture. What are the values? What are the beliefs and things that make them tick internally, so that you can hope to match that, or at least understand it, so that you can meet their needs in a better way. And of course, if those customers are in different countries, new countries you've never dealt with before, then again, you're going to have to apply perhaps some learning that you've had before to this new culture in terms of how they might possibly work.
Yeah, there's a nice case. There are plenty of case studies out there. I was reminded of one actually this morning. I think it was in one of the newsletters I got. I think it was the CEO, then CEO of Royal Dutch KLM Airlines, and they were preparing, or they're deepening their alliance with the Italian airline Alitalia. And I don't remember the name of the CEO. It's probably for the best, though he's not publicly shamed once again. He said something like, well, in global business, in business like this, cultural differences don't really matter, because the Dutchies like pizza and Italians like Dutch soccer. And that was his argument, that this was the baseline, this was the basics of this was the 101 of his cultural understanding. Needless to say, it was a very costly mistake. I don't know how many millions they buried with their misperceived merger and alliance. No, the Italians don't love Dutch soccer, neither do the Germans. And yes, most of us love pizza, but that doesn't mean we understand how Italians work, right? So understanding your customers, yes, that's a good. What a segue, huh? Like you prepared this.
Took us right there. You're so smart. You're so smart.
I didn't plan this, but it fits very well. So, yeah. Any other examples you can think of? Maybe not on such a big scale.
No, I think that, I mean, this is again related because I kind of, maybe they're the same thing. New customers, mergers, acquisitions, internal customers are customers too, right? So to your point, there's the road is paved with mergers and acquisitions that have gone south and squirrely because the culture has not taken time, the cultures have not taken time to assess each other. There's kind of normally this standoff, and they may be in the same business and they might just assume that everything is going to be the same. So it's quite a good point that you bring up.
Well,
So what about new leadership? What about
yeah. Exactly. So once the Dutch CEO makes a statement like this and steers the company in a direction, or flies the company in a direction that did not yield the desired destination, well, at some point he was relieved of his duties. So in comes the new leadership, and how do they know how to balance their new approach to leading an organization with the existing corporate culture? Sure, new leadership is brought in to bring about change or to improve performance. However, you're not swapping out the entire team, or at least most of the times you won't do that. So new leadership, how do you bring them on board with their change ideas, plus with understanding what's going on presently? How do I get the best out of what I'm presented here? So the new boss, when she comes in, she's confronted with an existing corporate culture. I'm saying she or he, whoever, whatever gender, they might be confronted with a team that has developed their ways of doing things, that they want to change. The new leaders, they do want to break that up. However, in order to make changes, you need to know where you start. So you got to go back to the basics.
The basics, right? And I think we often think about onboarding. The term onboarding is something that only applies to new employees. Yeah, but onboarding is a process that is just as important for a leader that's moving to a new country or moving into a role where they're managing a new country. So they have to. The onboarding takes place from both sides. They have to be intentional about what their goals are and how they're going to be able to motivate the, different people from different cultures are motivated in different ways. They respond to different leadership styles in either positive or negative ways. So part of that onboarding should include any cultural considerations so that new leader kind of knows when to style switch for those particular people that may have a different motivation in how they come to the work.
Right.
So that's certainly now what about a change of project? So obviously that if a project now brings in aspects of different functions of the organization, those functions of the organization might be different internally, but they also might be different externally in terms of bringing in skill sets from people from other countries, and so that could affect how successful or the transition into that new project is. Yeah.
And the common denominator for all these examples is, I think, when we ignore the basics, that's hubris. And I notice this with myself. I'm guilty as charged, because sometimes I attend like training sessions or webinars, or I'm in conversations with people or I follow it online on some social media threads, and there's a conversation ongoing about something that I consider to be something basic that's been dealt with. So my brain is telling me, oh, I know that, which are, in my opinion, the three most dangerous words in any type of learning. I know that tells your brain to not pay attention to whatever else is out there. So I know that is really dangerous, because it ignores the possibility that in a arguably basic conversation, there might be something of relevance to even those of us who are a little bit more advanced, or who think of themselves as more advanced. It's hubris, and I'm fighting it not on a daily. However, I remind myself that I've been falling into that trap, and it's not served me well. So remind yourselves, when was the last time you thought that you were presented with some information, you read an article, you watched a documentary, or listened to a podcast, or read something online, and your first thought was, I know that. I don't need to pay attention to that. I've been through this. Oh, they're talking about this and that. Yeah, whatever. On to new things. I challenge you.
And you know, I always like to say, it's time to think when you think you know all the time. That is something I stand by, and you know, it's always testing. Even when I'm coming to teaching or leading or facilitating a group, you know, from certain countries, I want to go back and I want to retest what I think that I know, because it may have changed. You know, take a country that's really evolved over a period of time, a short period of time, like some of the developing countries. These developing countries have now been exposed to different cultures in a way that they haven't been before. And it's actually the experience of the people in those cultures, the business people, the leaders, the people that do the work, has changed because they've either learned to adapt in some way, or they've learned, and the new people that have been exposed to their ways of thinking have adapted as well. So even assessment tools that we use, you know, constantly refreshing those, thinking about what has changed in the last 10, because business is fast, especially in today's global world. It's going fast, it's evolving quickly. You need to test your assumptions.
Yep. So Vali says here, and also creates an othering or a predisposition to exclude people from the conversation. So yeah, Vali, maybe you can provide us with a little more context. What exactly creates the othering or the predisposition? But I have a sense I know where you're going with this, and this display of, oh, I know this, or I've learned this, or I don't need to go back to the basics, may let you appear as elitist, or I know more than you, therefore you are inferior to me, and I don't need to dedicate too much time to you because you need to catch up to reach my level of expertise. And that is something that is not very endearing, let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, that can happen to a whole team, right? There could be an in-group, out-group type of situation that comes with people that have got that experience already. You know, there's 4 or 5 people on a team that work together, they know each other, and that basically creates for the new person on the team a sense that they're coming into a very foreign, it's already a foreign environment, but it's foreign from the fact that they have to spend time that they shouldn't have to spend in actually building credibility or trying to kind of crack through that shell of the in-group.
There are these stereotypes of corporate silos who apparently do this often. I've seen it often with clients. There's R&D or product development, the engineers in the organization. On the other hand, you have sales and marketing. Right. The one department are the brains and the thinkers who put together the product and make it the best possible product, so they think. And on the other hand, there are the people who are customer facing, who are selling that stuff, and they don't necessarily always work well together because R&D often thinks very highly of themselves and doesn't really appreciate these salespeople. Yeah, they're good talkers, but they don't understand what we're doing. And the salespeople say, well, these are lovely developers and they're great engineers, but do they always really understand what our clients really want? So are they cooking in their echo chamber and coming up with brilliant ideas to themselves, or are they serving the clients that we're talking to? So that could be that kind of disconnect, right?
Well, you know, I was just brought to mind what Kyle Hegarty said back when we interviewed him. That experience of having that manager say, just slap a dragon on it, right?
Slap dragon,
right? That was when it comes to products that you think, you know, we didn't point that out. Products that you've developed and that have been working in your culture, and then you try and launch that product in another country. Then how do you do that effectively? You need to go back to basics. You need to learn the culture, what's acceptable, what's the messaging, what's the proper marketing in that culture. And as Kyle said, not just slap a dragon on it and think it's going to work in that particular culture because you think that's what the customer wants to see.
if you don't want to slap a dragon on it, you could slap a Dalmatian on it. There's 101 of them. There
That's
you go.
right.
But that's an option.
That is an option.
There's many 101s you can do.
That's a good movie, by the way. Yeah.
All right. This is good. This is, I think, a good start in the week. Remember, people, never stop learning. Quit the sentence, I know that, because chances are you don't. And even if you do, it won't hurt reminding. There is this formula, and I should have looked this up before we went online. Now I forgot it. I want to say it's 24/7/10, I think, is the formula that is used in accelerated learning. If you learn something new, you want to repeat it 7 days in sequence. So 7 consecutive days, you want to review the learning. And after 24 hours, and only 10 minutes at a time. So you learn something new today, 24 hours later, you take 10 minutes to review it, and you do that in 7 consecutive days. That's how you anchor in the knowledge. That's how you go back to basics on a daily. Works for me. I think
absolutely cool. If it works for some, try it. New ideas. So what makes it effective learning for you, and hopefully maybe test that out on your colleagues and maybe your friends. Maybe your friends first, because they might understand. Maybe your family.
if you have friends, you'll find that out, because it's in the US. Thanksgiving is upcoming, so your family will be very close. So you'll find out how your family are your friends. All right,
absolutely.
We'll see you again tomorrow.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.